Hello and welcome to the very first book review. Now, if you're not really sure about this particular series, you can see a link to it here, which is the introduction. So it explains all what's going to happen in the book reviews and how I see the series going. And this is the very first short one. So there is a full one of this book, which you can see linked to here. Now, if you can't see either of those links, depending on what device you're on, there are links in the text description. So this is the first one. This is called The Book of Jonah. It was released in 1972 and is by Jonah Barrington and Clive Everton. Now, it's not actually written by Jonah. What happened was that Clive Everton sat down with him and talked to him, and they recorded what he said, and then those conversations were transcribed into the book. So it's in Jonah's words, but he didn't write it in the traditional sense. And then Clive Everton has got a few chapters in the middle. It's essentially an early biography of his life, but it's also like a training diary, a match diary of the things that he did and all of those kind of things. Now, it was released in 1972. You can buy it now for £2 plus postage. Link will be in the description as well. Maybe you can buy it from other places, but I've linked to the place that I bought mine. My copy was a little bit more expensive. It's hardback and it's a first edition, so I paid £8 for it, but I could have got it for much cheaper. So it talks about his early life, and then it moves on quite quickly to his early career, about how he started playing and the things he learned and the places that he played. Now, this book has a lot of personal significance for me because I was lucky enough to work with Jonah for a few years. We travelled together, we slept under the same roof, we ate, we toured, we practiced together. I was lucky enough to spend time with him. In addition, there's a lot of people that he mentions that I've been on court with and that I met and spent time with as well. So there is a strong connection. So it's maybe one of the reasons I chose this as the first one, and it's maybe why I'm over enthusiastic about it. But I really did enjoy reading this book. I read it very quickly as well. So his early life, his early career. And it also moves on to something called the Barrington Circus, which I want to explain very briefly. He had this idea of he's going to take 5 professionals, tour around the world giving exhibitions and clinics. Now, this was when he wanted to jump from being an amateur to a professional, and there was no clear path. At the time, it's my understanding that there were not enough tournaments, professional tournaments, if any professional tournaments, where you could actually make a living. The pros were basically club coaches, and they spent most of their time coaching, but they also spent more time playing. And that was felt that it was unfair to the amateur who had a job and then had to practice in the evening or depending on his job. So there was a big split between amateur and it wasn't called professional, it was called open. And tennis had made a change around the late 60s, maybe very early 70s, when they went to open. Anybody could play anybody. Now, for younger people listening to this, they might say, well, that's just crazy. I mean, that's what happened. But not back then. There was a distinct difference. And boxing still has that difference, by the way. So he talks about this tour. It went from the 15th of August to the middle of January. They were away for all of that time and they just travelled the world. They went literally everywhere. And they timed it so that the major championships, they were in the right place at the right time to play those major amateur championships. Some great stories, some really funny things that he talks about. He also talks about, and he becomes very, he has a scathing attack, that's maybe the nicest way to say it, on the establishment. Now, the establishment, as far as he was concerned, was the administrators of the game, especially within the United Kingdom. He felt that they were holding squash back, and I can't, say whether that's true or not, but if Jonah says it was true, then I probably believe it. He cites one particular example where, in addition to stopping people stamping when they hit the ball, they were talking about stopping people from bouncing the ball before you served. I have no idea, but that kind of mentality is shown in that idea of stopping that from happening. So he talks about that, talks about other tournaments as well. So it's a wonderful read. It's highly recommended by me. I don't think you need to be an aficionado of the game. I don't think you have to want to know the history and know every single thing that happened. Regular players, people interested in squash, and people interested in people I think we'll find this, and at £2, it's worth taking a chance of. Let me tell you the 3 favourite things from the book. The first one is when he's talking about playing Cam Nankoro, and he says that he played him once, and then 18 months later he played him again, and he had learnt a lot more about length. What's there to learn about length, you might think? Just hit the ball to the back. But it's not that simple. It's about variation in height, variation in speed, even variation in spin, variation in when you play them, how you move back afterwards. There's so much to learn. And just in that one sentence, he managed to encapsulate the idea that squash is not as simple as it seems. Next thing I want to show you is his schedule. All right, so basically 30 minutes in the morning running, hard running, and then 10:30 to 11:30, 1 hour solo practice, 45 minutes playing practice, 20 minutes immediately afterwards, interval training. That's like sprints and things. 90 minutes in the afternoon, weight training, and then more playing and practicing. Now, that is a tough schedule, and remember, he was really the first to do this. So a lot of the time he's trying all of these different ideas, and he doesn't know whether they're going to work. And in fact, in case you don't know, Jonah invented ghosting. And the last thing to tell you is, I'm going to read this. Regardless of how superb your technique is, if you can't reach the ball, you can't hit it. That is succinctly put. Basically, no matter how much I and other coaches convince you that you have to have great technique and you have to have great minds and think about it, if you don't do any fitness work, if you can't get to the ball, that's what he says, you can't hit it. And that is so true. So squash is obviously a physical game, and there's no getting away from that. So those are my thoughts on this particular book. That's the short version. I talk about lots of other things within the book if you want to see the full version. Do I recommend it? Yes. Seriously consider going buying it because I think you will enjoy it. So that's it for the first one. Time for the outro. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it was of interest. Please consider subscribing if you think my content is worth it. This is a video that YouTube thinks is a really good fit for you based on what you've been watching recently. And this is a playlist of all of the other book videos. Remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya.